Hey, what's up, everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. Got the Blackstone comic open here, and I want to show you something. I've got a scene that I've been penciling in. Rough sketched this thing in. I want to show you. I talked about the perspective lines and how that helps fill out the characters last week, and then also I wanted to mention, like how I would take this more rough line work, clean it up and the effect that why this is a good idea to do, or at least for my workflow. I like roughing it out, especially I'm real skeptical of where to put the shadows. So you can see this is very murky looking and rough, but I kind of need to do that because I'm not the greatest at applying my shadows, and I think this helps. So if you're struggling in that area, this might help you too. Manga Studio, you can convert that to blue line just by clicking right there, which is pretty darn sweet. I'll tone this down just a little bit, and I'll add my other layer over top. Now, this is my opportunity when I draw this next layer to, fix anything that I see that might not look correct. And I have one more stage because I'll end up inking this too, but, so I'll try to make any additions or changes as I'm drawing this. You can hit R and rotate the screen there, which is, again, pretty awesome. So what I do is I focus on cleaning up the line work, adding a little bit more flair to it, maybe, you know, straightening out certain angles or, touching up some anatomy, giving it a little bit more finesse or flair or whatever. And then mainly getting my shadows, drawn in cleaner and more correct. So just kind of scribble this all in here. Okay. So now what I do is get in here and just, again, try to touch this up, clean it up, give it a more precise look where, up here you can tell I was just still kind of halfway scribbling in some of my shadows. Manga Studio always has this interactive zoom, which is really great, and hold space bar to move your screen around real quickly. Um, just want to explain that, so if any of you are new to Manga Studio, it'll help you in that regard also. You can just do little X's right here. You really don't have to scribble this in. I don't know why, but I like to. I guess it helps me visualize the end result a little bit better. I'll do a little bit of line work here. I can always do that to the back of my shadows, and my reasoning is that maybe there's a tiny bit of a light source, on the back of the leg or something like that. And then it gives a little bit more room for effects when you go to color. So I do that dual light source a lot. Kind of overdo it, I think. But again, if my books ever go to color, which hopefully they will at some point, I'll have that down to a science, and I can make that work really pop with the color, the colorization of it. And there, I just work on feathering some lines in. I do kind of this thick to thin feathering effect. You can see what I'm doing there. I'm not just pulling one line, one line, one line. You can do that. I'm not knocking it. It's just the way that I draw. I feel a little bit more control, and I guess it's a little more time consuming to do it this way, but it's always the way I've created my line work. A little bit of crosshatch, not much. Trying to get away from it too. It can be overdone really quickly, and I feel that I'm leaning more to that, and I need to watch it. I want my art to stand alone. If a drawing is really truly correct, it doesn't need a whole lot of cross hatching. It's fun to do that stuff, and it's kind of addicting, but you got to make sure it doesn't become a crutch also. The other thing is line weight. Always make sure, like if you're trying to show that a certain part of, say, this leg here has, the muscle up here is thicker. Line weights convey two things, in my opinion. They convey the side that's away from the light, as far as a heavier shadow, and they also convey a stylized kind of depiction to draw attention to certain parts, or stylize the drawing to stand off the page. So it's not always just the light source. I mean, really that's what it's supposed to be there for. But if you look at a lot of really good artists, and I try to study other artists when I can, you'll see that some of them just use it randomly, even especially the shape around the character. They'll just kind of go thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin to make the character just stand off the background. It's not always, perfectly, perfect depiction of just light and dark. So style and shading, but it's very important. Good line weight really, uh, will do a lot more than, especially if you over crosshatch your drawings. Um, you know, the line weight's more important pound for pound than crosshatching, I would say. And then also knowing when to omit lines and not over segment, which I have a bad problem of doing. You can see that here. It's better to probably even just hint to these areas, like with a little bit of start to the line, maybe in a couple little dashes or something like that, and then let it go. Don't sit there and, segment the entire leg like that. It looks ridiculous. Unless you like that style, then by all means do it. Grim kind of has these weird looking little bone things around like that. Finish the sash. I don't know if that's called a sash, but that's what I'm calling it, so that's what it is. Okay. Um, so now, I guess I'll do a little bit of I do lines like this more for texture. I guess it does round out that form just a hair, but that's more of just to give more life to that line that was there kind of floating by itself. Now the other thing that I did preliminary, and the reason why I did so much scribbling in this design, I was really trying to work this form out. Upshots are always a pain for me. That's why actually, if you look at my work, I try to throw them in quite a bit, um, which may be bad marketing on my point. I don't know, but it's mainly, I know that I'm not great at them, but I want to be great at them. I think they're imperative to telling a good story, and they're good for dramatization. So I will continue to throw them in my stories and force myself to get not just good at them, but great at them at some point is my goal. Um, and they're so hard to find good reference. I'm probably just going to start taking more photo. I set up a little camera and tripod in my studio here, and I'm going to start doing more photo reference of that stuff and really studying, what happens. Unfortunately, I'm not as cut as this guy, so I'm going to have to emulate that somehow. Um, but the thing is it's so easy to get these wrong. But what I did in this initial sketch stage is I shifted the anatomy a lot. That's why I was scribbling on it so much. I still don't entirely like the shadow and the perspective of the underneath of the arm and the lat here. I think it'll work for now, and I gotta move on. I can't overly hang out in one area too long, or I'll never get this stuff done. But I kept shifting it. What I did is I kept shortening the pecs here and bringing this line up further. Initially, this line right here with the chest was down to about, we'll say, here, and it curved down more. And the more I looked at it and the more I tried to stretch this pose, I was like, you know what, this thing needs to curve up stronger. It'll make the pecs look shorter. From this perspective, they would anyways. I'll put more emphasis on the sternum here, and I kept pushing this line, this center line of the chest. Initially was like here, and I'm like, wait a second, it wouldn't be lined up with the chin because, from this angle, the chest, would bow out further like this. Um, so again, I kept moving this line work around until I got something that I was decently satisfied with. So that's what kind of the gist of this and what I was trying to explain is that, that's sometimes why, um, you know, not going directly to finished pencils is a really good idea, because if you go directly to finished pencils, then you're just gonna kind of live with something that may not look correct maybe. But if you do your stages properly, your scribbling and your rework of your pencil work, stuff like that, it'll give you more opportunity to fix stuff like this. Like I even warped this character. It's a really neat effect in Manga Studio. I'll show you that here in a second. Which I believe I've showed that in other videos, but I'll touch on it again. It's a really cool feature, and it's a good way to fix things without having to do redraws if you really just don't like redrawing. The way that I do it is I soft erase down, and then I fix it by drawing over top, and I just look at it like, you know what, I'm just adding more data. You know, if I do it just right and I soft erase just enough, I'm leaving myself blueprints for the next stage of it, and it makes it really nice and easy to work from. So again, I could just throw the little X's in here, but I just pencil it in. I don't know why. Apparently I like to waste time. Okay, and here's the hint of the ribs. I'll put a lot of this just in shadow. I always want to like leave little highlight spots. Another good thing about digital is you're better off just filling the stuff in, and if you really want to bring it back out, you can set your pen to transparent or white. Transparent's nice because if you're gonna, you know, maybe make certain changes, I just say recommend transparent. But anyways, you can paint back in your smaller details like that. It's a really neat effect. I use it a lot when I'm drawing the Blackstone character because he's a shiny black, you know, metallic or whatever, and then I can easily paint back in the white highlights in the character, so it makes it for, you know, a quicker way to draw that character, which is really nice. I'm not sure how much I want. I want to do a little bit of line work under this chest, you know, area of the pec, but I don't want to overdo it. It's real easy to overdo stuff like this, so I'm gonna make sure I got a good heavy shadow. And then I'll put just enough line work, and I'll probably bring the lines this way. Yeah, that's fine. Not great, but like I said, it's real easy to overdo stuff like that. Okay, so now let's spacebar, move this down. I guess what I'll show you too is that warp effect real quick. So say I want to adjust this arm a bit. I'll go back to my blue line layer. I'll make a selection around the arm. I'll go to about here where it connects to the shoulder. And then if I go, what is it, edit, transform, mesh transformation, not only does it allow me to interactively grab parts of this and move it around, which is pretty cool, I can even, and the thing that separates this from Photoshop, Photoshop does this too, you can add vertices, which I think they're called vertices. If I'm saying that wrong, forgive me. But so you can, you know, get in there a little bit more detailed. So now if I want to work just in this bicep area, I can add probably a couple more. And can I zoom? It's, you want to make sure you're zoomed in the right degree before you do it. But at any rate, now I can move parts of this bicep around individually, and maybe I want it to protrude more at the top or something like that, or whatever. I don't think that's bad. And so you can just adjust those. So really great time saver for adjusting your artwork and not having to do an entire redraw if you think it's salvageable. So now if I go edit, undo, and look at that, edit, redo, and look at that, you know. I'll even go with that. Screw it, it's not that bad. So, but yeah, at any rate, I want to show you that because that's actually a really neat tool, and I love the fact that they allowed you to add vertices or segments to the mesh transformation. So really good addition to that that effect. Okay, so back to my pencil layer. Actually, let me name that Crim Pencils. I've seen some guys too will actually go through and do all their line weight first. It's probably good. It probably allows you to not get distracted. So instead of like doing what I did where I just kind of mosey on through the whole thing, some guys will go through and do just the line weight first. So something like this where focus more on just the thick to thin effect of the outline. Kind of drawing that in a little too dark, but so something like that. You know, it's basically to show a little bit more depth in the form. One thing I'm noticing, I got the forearm too small, and the this overall area is a little bit too long there, but just gonna have to roll with it. Oh, and something like this, you can see where I started to make the shadow go like that. That's one way to shadow it, but it makes it look like the light's lower coming from right here. I think that I'm trying to signify that the light's a little bit higher, so I Control Z back, and then I change the shadow to round out on the form like this. So again, that's where the rough sketching, you know, allows you to make changes like that, and because it's digital, it's so easy to do, and you know, go, you know, Control Z back or add new layer, whatever you got to do. Now here what I'm trying to do is add some good heavy shadows to make it look like the light source is on top of the character's arm. So the bottom of the arm is in a lot of shadow, but also leave some hint of the detail. Uh, so what I do is I kind of trace around, like if the light was kind of protruding around some of the anatomy, and then again on the inside of the arm I would just leave a few little scraps of detail, which I'll probably just shade with some line work. So something like this. Underneath here I think there'd be kind of a little shape of the muscle. You know, just little things like that. And it's probably not correct or anything. I'm not looking at reference, which I probably should on something like this. But you know, I just kind of envision what it might look like. And then again, like I said, I'll probably go back through because these are on the bottom of the arm, so I want it to look like these are shaded down. And then again, if this ever was colored, if they were doing a dual light source, like you know, a low light underneath, these would maybe be colored a little bit with that low light color. I may redo those because those shapes are a little bit too bland. I don't know, they're not sitting well. That's something I got to study more, is my my light and shadow. So hard though, because a lot of this stuff is about style, but then it has to have some basis of reality, uh, and especially in the dynamics of the way that you draw, or it just doesn't seem to do as well, I think. But then again, the other part is if it has too much basis to reality, say realism or whatever, especially in comics, it doesn't seem to do as well. Um, all the books that I've ever seen do really well uh, were more fantasy related and uh, stylized. So, so I guess you just got to find your, you know, your happiness, your mix in there, which is good for me because I really can't do realism that well, anyways. So. You see I'm kind of doing a lot of the repetitive lines. One of the reasons being is that he's the same texture all the way through here. This is his skin tone. So I know that I should be changing it up a bit to make it look cooler and different. But to me, the way that I kind of work is if something's more specular, then I'll give it a different shading and highlight effect or whatever. And then if it's a skin tone, especially the same character, I kind of keep that the same. So, like for instance, you see that I detailed the sash differently than I did his leg and his arm. So I try to stay consistent with uh, that texturing, even with my drawing, because to me, that's what signifies, uh, that he's not wearing some sheath of clothing or, armor or whatever. So that's my reasoning, anyways, of why I do it that way. I think I'm going to blacken this in, but I'll probably come back and highlight an area that looks like you can kind of see some of the vein work in the shadow. I think that'll look kind of neat. But I can do that again with just by clicking down here under transparency, and then you come back through and kind of, maybe do like a crossing vein here, and then you have it get larger and then fade off, and then maybe another hint of the underneath muscle there. I don't know, something like that. Okay, so now, as we're getting a little bit lengthy in this video, you can see how long it takes me to do this stuff. I'm not insanely fast at it. Okay, so there's the bottom of that arm. I think that works, decently well enough for what I was going for. And you can see the difference from, the murkiness to it being cleaned up to this layer. Trying to think if there's anything else I can explain to you in this process. Um, I guess that about covers it. I'll work on this arm a little bit. That way, if I think of anything else, I can explain. But that's ultimately what I do. So I rough it out, uh, really rough, overly rough. And the more I do it, the more I'm actually realizing I need to start roughing this stuff out more, because you kind of find things in that process. So that's the cool thing about it, is to where if you overdraw it and you try to draw it very clean right off the start, for one, I think you pitch more artwork, which you don't want to do. You want to have a process where you can flow right through this stuff and get to an acceptable point reliably and quickly, because that's how you produce books. So if you're in the habit of just throwing away your art and then going, well, I'll do better tomorrow, then you got a problem there. You're not going to be able to produce on a deadline. So you have to figure out your workflow and go, how can I get through this properly and effectively? And so that's where I think the roughing stage is very important, right from the gesture lines that you begin with to figuring out, like I'm trying to figure out my shadows here in my anatomy, and it's an area where I struggle. I've always been bad with shadows. It's one of the reasons why I look at other artists' work and try to see what they see, and then also you got to not do that too much. You got to also study life, and kind of hodgepodge all that together. So yeah, and then that's you see how I'm just drawing the shadow right there, and then from this angle I would see the shadow kind of coming this way onto this little piece of muscle or whatever, and just kind of rounding those lines just a little bit to make it look like the shadow's wrapping around that muscle or whatever. Um, that's the other thing is when you're doing these kind of lines to make them flow with the muscle, with the shape, you don't always have to do that, but that's ultimately what you're doing, is you're kind of pointing out the direction of the shading. So yeah, at any rate, I'll kind of get this to a close because we're at the 25-minute markers, or 24 or so. So I do thank you for watching. I appreciate all the support on the channel here, and it's fun to be able to show you part of what I do with my Blackstone comic. And sorry the process is so slow, and the books don't come out sooner. I have to, I run a business of mine where I do graphics and logos and things like that, but I'm trying to make the art thing a full-time career, so that's part of what you're seeing here. So make sure that you like and subscribe and share the videos if they're helpful. And if there's something in particular you'd like to see, let me know that so I can put that on the list of the videos that I create and get that out to you. I do respond to every comment at this point. There are more and more coming in all the time, so I don't know how long I'll be able to do that. But my goal is to always be responsive and helpful to you guys that are supportive, and that's what makes this whole thing work. So, you can check out Blackstone on indieplanet.com. I should have book 2 done here in sometime soon, and add that to the collection. Then I'll just keep progressing unless something happens to change that. And then, yeah, like us on Facebook under Ram Studio Comics. And I do thank you for watching. Keep drawing, keep having fun, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.